If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that 2 dirty bombs, or possibly a suitcase nuke, will explode in Manhattan, New York City on March 22nd, 2025. There will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island. Martial law will be declared in the U.S. I am predicting that on April 26, 2025, Israel will bomb, possibly with nuclear bombs, Iran's nuclear and energy weapons facilities. It is also possible that the U.S. will also bomb Iran alongside Israel on April 26th. I am also predicting that a nuclear bomb will be detonated on June 8, 2025. It is possible that April 26, 2025 is a step in the trail of signs that is leading to the date that Israel will bomb Iran on June 8th. It is also possible that June 8th is also a step in the trail of signs leading to another date in the future on which Israel will bomb Iran and a date on which a nuclear bomb will be detonated. If that is the case, we can expect clear and relevant prophetic signs to occur on April 26th and June 8th. It is predicted that on June 9th, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. If June 9th is not the date for these events, there will be a relevant prophetic sign or prophetic signs, which will make June 9th a step in the trail of signs leading to the date of the symbolic beginning of these things. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025. Which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 30th in the North America time zones and on August 31st in the Asia time zones, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the East Coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the West Coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. She will stack the Supreme Court, and she will appoint Barack Obama as her vice president, and then she will step down, making Barack Obama the 50th president. This is speculation, but it could be that there will be a movement to make Trump the president for a third term, arguing that he is eligible because he hasn't served 2 consecutive terms. And if so, this will backfire, as it will lead the way for Barack Obama to serve a third term that isn't consecutive. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. Unless there are multiple rapture events, the resurrection rapture event will not occur before Pentecost on June 4th, 2028. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on in case you can't find me later. Hello, welcome. This video is predicting that 2 dirty bombs will explode in New York City in Manhattan, and there will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island. And the date that this video is posted proves the prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this email, which, as we can see here, was sent 15 minutes ago. But here we can see the date, which is today's date, March 18th. This analysis regards the Dragon Crew rescue and many other things. As is always the case in every video, it's not really appropriate to give it a title, given that it always involves God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which involves all sorts of different signs. But if we were to give some sort of theme, if you will, we could give it this theme here. Anyway, I'll be talking about the prophetic sign that occurred on March 18th, which was the Dragon Crew splashdown and the rescue of the astronauts. And believe it or not, God has used this to point to Pulp Fiction, the movie. And Pulp Fiction, the movie, believe it or not, hints at the coming dirty bomb explosions in New York City. You will see, it'll be very clear as well once it's explained. And so let's get into what I wrote. Dragon Crew 9 rescued the astronauts that had been in space for 9 months. They splashed down off the coast of the capital city of the 9+9+9th state. The number 9 in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, symbolizes judgment, as from the Bible is the most important number in God's signs, as in, signs, patterns, and connections. As from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. Also, when asked by his disciples for the signs to look for of his return, Jesus replied with the metaphor of birth pains. And of course, the average human gestation period is 9 months. And so in God's signs, 9 months connections hint at the birth pains, which is in itself symbolism for the end times period that we are in, that precedes the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, so the rescue was of these stranded astronauts that had been in space for 9 months, a prophetic 9 months. Furthermore, what confirms that as being relevant is that they were rescued by the Dragon Crew 9. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And so if we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide second witnesses for us to confirm the matter is through pairing certain numbers together. Obviously, 9 and a 9 pair together, they are the same number, but the number 9, again, is the most important number in God's signs. As from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment. Okay, now the significance prophetically of the name Dragon Crew is that in Revelation chapter 12 is the allegory of the dragon that is thrown down from heaven to earth, which is what is symbolized by the Dragon Crew missions that descend from the second heaven, outer space, to earth. Okay, and in Revelation chapter 12, incorporated into this allegory of the dragon is a period of 1,260 days, which is also mentioned 6 other times for a total of 7 times in Bible prophecy as being the period of time that symbolizes the Antichrist period and the end times. Now, the date of the splashdown on March 18th, the date 318, hints at 18 divided by 3, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And in Bible prophecy, the number 666 is associated with the Antichrist, as is in Bible prophecy the dragon. So the dragon crew splashed down on this date that has embedded in it symbolically 666. 318, as in March 18th, was 1,214 days after May 2nd, 2021. An extremely, extremely important date that was known since late 2016 as being the beginning of a symbolic 1,260-day period. Which is why this is astounding, the sign we received on that date that was expected years in advance for being associated with a 1,260-day period, as I'll explain here. But first, the sum of the divisors of 1,214 is 3,600. God uses the sum of divisors of a number for prophetic significance. And the number 36 is extremely relevant and significant here because 36 hints at 666. It hints at 3 sixes, 666. It is also 6 times 6. It is also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number, in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Okay? So that's why this connection of 1,214 with its sum of the divisors equaling 3,600 gives us or hints at 666. But also, again, this connection is from this date 318, which also hints at 666. And again, this date, as I'll explain now, also is very Antichrist. Now, the dragon crew splashed down on May 2nd, 2021, and that's what I'm talking about. So what we have here, in other words, is this 666 embedded connection between the splashdown on 318 and the extremely prophetic splashdown on May 2nd, 2021. Splashdown to splashdown involving 666. And that splashdown began, as I mentioned, the symbolic 1,260 days before the Day of Atonement in 2024. Again, that connection was known since 2016, and that the reason for the significance of May 2nd is, in fact, this connection. It was subtracted this number of days from the Day of Atonement in 2024, and that's why this date was known to be important. On the Day of Atonement, what we received as in terms of prophetic signs confirmed all of the analysis also. That was the day of the announcement, admission by the Department of Defense that for weeks there had been dozens of fleets of unidentified flying objects, or drones as they put it, that were hovering over U.S. military sites and that they could do nothing about it. All right? And so what that was, in truth, was demonic. It's possible, and then, of course, this led to later after that, weeks after that, because I'm talking about October 13th, and then the hysteria regarding the UFOs and drones, I believe that was in January, or if not December, but it wasn't in October. And anyway, the point is that in that hysteria period, because, well, of course, that's not being talked about in the media anymore because it was a peak in hysteria over the matter. More than likely, much of the sightings weren't, in fact, anything more than airplanes or something, easily explainable. However, that said, much of it was also unidentified objects. And what the truth of the matter is that the explanation regarding it being some sort of mysterious drone technology from a foreign government is that no, they were demons putting on a show in the sky. It was demonic. It's part of what is coming. It's an illusion. It's a warning or a prelude to what is coming, which is what's described in Revelation chapter 9 when the door to the bottomless pit is opened and the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm, and demons cross over into the earthly realm and pretend to be aliens, which is what they are currently doing with these unidentified flying objects. And so it's a prelude. It's a warm-up. It's like getting people primed for the acceptance of aliens, is what it is. All right? And anyway, that's what happened on this prophetic Day of Atonement date that was known years in advance. And that's relevant to the connection to the splashdown of the Dragon Crew. Because the splashdown of the Dragon Crew, again, is a metaphor, or rather a prophecy pointing to Revelation chapter 12, and the allegory of the dragon and his minions being thrown down from heaven to earth, which is symbolic of the demons who will be crossing over from the demonic realm into the earthly realm and pretending to be aliens. Okay, now, there's more details, much more. I won't get into it here because I've gone through it many other times in other videos, to the prophetic significance of the splashdown on May 2nd, 2021. It was the second of the Dragon Crew SpaceX splashdowns. Now, right. Also, on the Day of Atonement, Trump trumpeted in California California was a quote-unquote paradise lost, and he trumpeted this in Coachella Valley in California. And California and the word Trump, the name California and the word Trump are equal to 88 in simple English gematria. And also California is the 31st state, and G31 in the Greek concordance means to announce, as in trumpet. So Trump was trumpeting, announcing Paradise Lost, which is a part of this pattern, this, of course, much bigger pattern of God's use of Trump to trumpet the coming judgment and destruction of America. That's why he trumpeted, for example, Paradise Lost and Coachella. And there was more to this too. He had, at the time on the stage, Dennis Quaid at the rally. It was his only rally in California. He did that to, troll the Democrat-run state. And Dennis Quaid is part of this because of other reasons, including his recent movie, The Substance, and also Ronald Reagan, the movie Reagan, his recent movie, but also he narrated and is an activist for this particular cause of this documentary that he narrated, which is Power Grid Down, which is about the coming collapse of the power grid in America due to the coming solar flare that's predicted for August 13th this year. All right. Now, we got to move on. The splashdown on May 2nd, 2021 was exactly 9 months after the first Dragon Crew splashdown, which was also prophetic. And so that confirms the rescued astronauts after 9 months. Because again, the rescued astronauts after 9 months connects back to these other two splashdowns, which were exactly 9 months apart. And that again is prophetic because also the Dragon Crew splashdown on May 2nd, 2021, that was after exactly 9 months, alluded to Revelation chapter 12 and the dragon. And in that chapter, in the allegory, the dragon is thrown down from heaven to earth after the woman gives birth. And again, 9 months symbolizes a gestation period and the birth. So that's amazing, right? Okay, so that's clearly all connected then. Now, this story on 318 is how the Dragon Crew and the rescued astronauts finally deboarded the capsule through the hatch. That was the, they weren't really back in America until they exited the hatch, if you will, onto the ship, right? And that was what was covered in the news video footage of this whole event too, was them deboarding the capsule, the Dragon Crew capsule. Now, they entered into the capsule through the hatch door from the space station and then exited the hatch door onto the ship on Earth. This is symbolism for the entrance of demons from the demonic realm into the earthly realm through a portal door. The dragon crew exited the portal door of the capsule back on Earth 2 times 6 times 6 days after the 266th Pope opened the 5th of 5 doors in his ritual. Okay, he had this ritual that he conducted, a ritual that apparently is conducted every 5 times 5 years, and it involved opening 5 doors. And the day that the 5th door was opened, like I said, is 2 times 6 times 6 days after this 266th Pope opened this 5th of 5 doors, which was on the 5th day of the month in the year 5 times 5, which all alluded to or pointed to the 5th trumpet judgment in Revelation chapter 9, which is exactly what I'm speaking about, which is the opening of the bottomless pit and the demons crossing over from the demonic realm. In that chapter, it's said that the bottomless pit is opened with a key, and that's why the symbol for the Vatican is keys. I do expect at some point that the Pope will announce that aliens have made him the ambassador for the world, because the Pope is the first of the 2 antichrists described in Bible prophecy. Okay, now, so this day of the opening of the 5th door on the 5th day of the month, the 5th of 5 doors, was also the day of the Golden Globe Awards in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is part of a pattern God is using to hint at fallen angels. Los Angeles is Spanish for the angels. And that's what the dragon crew and the dragon in Revelation chapter 12 and his minions hint at, the fallen angels, the demons that are thrown down from heaven to earth. The Golden Globe Awards, a globe is the earth. The statue for the award is a depiction of the earth. Okay? Now, during the Golden Globes, on the 5th of the month, on the day that the Pope opened the 5th of 5 doors, the 5th annual Carol Burnett Award was awarded to Ted Danson, who starred in The Good Place. If I recall, it's an award for a lifetime achievement in comedy. And part of the comedy career of Ted Danson included the show The Good Place, which is about heaven and hell. And so what we are talking about again is this allegory and symbolism of the dragon being thrown down from heaven to earth. The Carol Burnett show's intro, so when I learned this, when I read about the Golden Globe Awards, and I read this about the Carol Burnett Award and it's being awarded to Ted Danson, etc., I had a funny feeling to check the intro of the Carol Burnett show, because this is like before my time. The Carol Burnett show is a show from I believe, the early 70s, maybe even late 60s. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's the late 70s. But either way, I just wondered if there were any doors involved in the intro to the show. Because the intro to the show is symbolic of the show, right? If there weren't any doors in the intro to the show, I would be open-minded to a particular iconic, episode that involved that would be too difficult, because obviously every episode would involve a door. People walk in and out of doors in comedy sketches all the time. So never mind that thought. I don't even know if that thought was relevant, because I don't even recall thinking that. I just thought of it just now. But anyway, what I do recall is thinking some sort of intuition that, I wonder if there's any doors involved in the intro to the Carol Burnett show. And sure enough, the whole intro is entirely about doors. It's absolutely stunning, but not only that, it involves 5 doors. So look it up for yourself on YouTube. The intro to the Carol Burnett show is a cartoon character of Carol Burnett, and she's portrayed as a janitor. She opens the first door to the studio, and then inside the studio, she opens 3 more doors to images of her co-hosts, because there's 4 co-hosts for the show. And then the last door, the fifth door, is the door to the stage for the performance. The janitor cartoon walks through that fifth door, and then the credits come, and then that's the end of the intro. It's all about 5 doors. And here we have the 5th Carol Burnett Award on the day of the 5th of the month when the Pope opened the 5th of 5 doors. And anyway, so that's really important, right? But what here is the connection too, is that day was 2 times 6 times 6 days. Okay, so that day, was the day that the 266th Pope opened the 5th of 5 doors, and it was 2 times 6 times 6 days to this relevant related sign that I'm saying, this dragon crew splashdown, which is hinting at the coming opening of the door portal to the demonic realm. God pairs 9 and 23 together to confirm his signs and connections. As I mentioned, God provides second and third witnesses to confirm a matter, and the way to do it easily is to pair certain numbers together, and I know which numbers they are because I have been studying his true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections from morning until night for more than full-time hours for more than 7 years. And so he pairs 9 and 23, one reason being is that the basketball president who wore 23 in high school was inaugurated in 2009, and the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist that is described in Ezekiel chapter 9, and the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. The number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which is why also God pairs 9 and 22. The inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in Ezekiel chapter 9 would have been a Tav mark, and the letters of the Hebrew alphabet are also symbols for things, and Tav is the last letter and the 22nd letter, and it is symbolic of a mark. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which is the 22nd out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, and chromosome is a pair of 2 arms, and they come in pairs, so 2 and 2, as in 22. Okay, so God pairs 9 and 23, and also 9 and 22. After rescuing the astronauts that had been in space for 9 months, the Dragon Crew 9 fell to Earth from the second heaven and exited the portal door on 3/18, which since it's 6 + 6 + 6, as I mentioned. And that is, this day, the 23rd prime number of days before what I call is Revelation 9/11 day on June 6th this year. June 9th this year. Now, I call it Revelation 9/11 day because something symbolic will happen on that day that will be a symbolic beginning to what is ultimately happening, which is the opening of the bottomless pit and the crossing over and the collision between the demonic and earthly realm. And I don't think everything's going to happen on June 9th, but there'll be something that will happen that will be related to this, probably a symbolic beginning to something, or if not, maybe equally as likely, a 50-50, there will be a prophetic sign that will be relevant, and that will make June 9th a step in the trail of signs that will lead on further down the road to the actual symbolic beginning of the collision between the demonic realm and earthly realm. I'm leaning towards the latter because it seems a little bit early in the timeline. The second coming of Lord Jesus Christ won't be until the end of 2031. And so for the demonic realm to be opened up fully this early, I'm skeptical about. So if that's the case, it'll be a step. Now, the prophetic signs won't be recognized by obviously everyone, and let alone quote-unquote Christians. It's for those that are watching, but even the quote-unquote watchers aren't really watching, most of them. Some are doing their best, and some are doing a great job, and I learn from them too, but the majority aren't really watching. That think that they are watching. Like they know of a few signs, like for example, the eclipse and the Revelation 12 sign in 2017. They know a few signs in the night sky, and then they continue to try to figure out codes within the Bible text to figure out the timing of the rapture. But the truth of the matter is that God is overwhelmingly conveying so much more information than simply the timing of the rapture, which they have no clue about.
And the reason for saying that is that that's what we're talking about here. God is revealing the timing of the symbolic beginning of this event that and so June 9th will either be a step in the trail to that date or the actual date of the symbolic beginning. What could theoretically be the symbolic beginning? Well, that theoretically and maybe even likely will be the recognition of the mainstream media that aliens exist. But of course, the truth is that aliens do not exist. They are demons pretending to be aliens. And this is a test designed by God to separate the tares from the wheat, the true Christians from the quote-unquote Christians. Who, at this point, the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians believe in the possibility of there being aliens, which means they aren't Christian. Because the biblical worldview not only has it that the earth and man is the center of God's creation, but God became a man and died for the sins of men and did not take the form of other alien life forms and hopscotch around the universe, dying on crosses on other alien planets. Therefore, that's the foundation of Christianity, and that means they are not Christian. They do not have a solid biblical worldview, and that's the case for the vast majority of quote-unquote Christians. Hopefully, many of them will be woken up, and that also is part of God's plan for these events that are coming, to shake them and to have them reassess what they think and believe, and to finally decide whether they want to be with God or the world, ruled by Satan. Now, okay, so this 23rd prime number of days pairs with the nines, right? The 9 months and the Dragon Crew 9. From that splashdown after 9 months of the Dragon Crew 9, it is the 23rd prime number of days to the Revelation 9/11 day, June 9th, which also incidentally hints at 666, because 6 divided by 9 is 0.666. And again, this connection begins with this date that also hints at 666. And you got the 23 pairing with the 9. And this is how it works. The pairings of 9 and 23 are not for the purpose of identifying the Antichrist, the basketball president who wore 23 and was inaugurated in 09. That's like elementary. That's like foundational. It's a given that at this point, God has been revealing the identity of the Antichrists, well, Barack Obama specifically, for many, many years, for those that are really watching. And contrary to what the heretical evangelicals believe based on their interpretation of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the identity of the Antichrist is definitely knowable. And it is known through God's signs, for example. And furthermore, Old Testament prophecy is clear as day that the first of the two Antichrists would be a pope. And it is in fact shameful that Protestants have lost this knowledge. There wouldn't have been a Reformation without this knowledge. But the knowledge has been lost in the last 70 years, perfectly timed for the deception of the Antichrist. And I call them heretics because their interpretation that tells them that it's the Holy Spirit that's holding back the Antichrist is based ultimately in their heretical soteriological doctrine of Reformed theology and Calvinism and once saved, always saved, etc., cheap grace, etc. So that's where they get, that's the root of it all, and that's why it's all rotten. And that's why they can't see it. God won't let them also see it because it's judgment for their doctrine. Okay? Which Jesus said he hates in Revelation chapter 2. He's coming to make war with this Nicolaitan doctrine and those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. He's coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those. Okay, so anyway, let's move on here. Oh yes, so also the 83 days is also 2 months and 22 days, which gives us the 22. This is making it a pairing of 9 and 22. As I explained, that hints at the mark of the Antichrist. Also, when the demons come, they will be promoting the mark of the Antichrist and promising rejuvenation and reversal of aging and immortality without God. The big lie at the end of the age will be the same lie at the beginning of the age when the serpent told Eve that she shall surely not die. And so that's why Aliens Day is another title you could give to this Revelation 9/11 day. Okay, so also on March 18th, this day we are talking about, the splashdown, the JFK files were released. There's been a big lead up, even during the campaign. Trump was promising to release the files. Well, the files have been released, and it's all symbolism in terms of prophecy. Okay, and that was this day, the day of the splashdown, which is interesting because this is a space sign, and it was JFK that inspired America to go to space. This was the first splashdown. God uses firsts for signs. This was the first splashdown in the Gulf of America. And it involved the number 9s, and the number 9 is important, the most important number, because it symbolizes judgment, making this a judgment warning for America. I actually just jumped ahead, but let's continue here. So this was exactly 69 weeks, okay? March 18th, this day, the JFK files release, was 69 weeks exactly. That comes from the most central prophecy in the Bible in Daniel chapter 9, the 70 weeks prophecy, which is broken into a 69-week period followed by a 70th week period. And the beginning of the 70th week, in other words, the end of the 69th week, is symbolically referring to the beginning, or rather the period of the Antichrist and the end times. Okay, so this was exactly 69 weeks after November 22nd, 2023, and the car explosion at the border wall of security at the Rainbow Bridge crossing. Okay, this was at the border, and God is using this for symbolism for judgment on America because of the book of Joshua and the Israelites marching around the border wall of security of the ancient city of Jericho before it collapsed in God's judgment. And on this day, we had at the border, at the Rainbow Bridge, because the rainbow is God's sign regarding judgment, and at the Rainbow Bridge, at the border, we had the car explosion. All right, and that was 69 weeks exactly to the JFK files release. The reason why that's relevant is because the car explosion on this date, November 22nd, 2023, was exactly 2 times 30 years after the CIA assassinated JFK on November 22nd, 1963. The 69 weeks connection is actually 23 plus 23 plus 23 weeks. And God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And so what we have here is this 69 weeks connection, making it a pairing with the 2 times 30 years. In other words, from the assassination, it is exactly 2 times 30 years, followed by exactly 23 plus, which hints at 23. 2 times 30 years hints at 23. And that's followed with exactly 23 plus 23 plus 23 weeks to this splashdown, which is also JFK symbolism in a way because, well, not in a way, it is big time because JFK is symbolic of the space missions. That's why, for example, the Space Center in Florida is the JFK, or rather the Kennedy Space Center, right? Okay, now, and also the splashdown, this one that just happened, was off the coast of the capital city of the 9 plus 9 plus 9th state, Florida. Dragon Crew 9, after 9 months, splashed down off the shore of the capital city of the 9 plus 9 plus 9th state, Florida, which is where the Kennedy Space Center is. All right, and that's also a pairing of 9 and 23 also, because you have these 23s that lead up to this splashdown, which involved big time the number 9, as I've explained, right? It's Dragon Crew 9. They are launched, by the way, on the Falcon Rocket 9, the Dragon Crew missions. Okay, so that confirms the signs and connections also. That's like a 3rd or 4th or 5th witness confirmation there, the fact that the 23s pair with the 9s ultimately, from the death of JFK, who symbolizes the space missions, to this space splashdown. Now, March 18th, 2025, the splashdown and the release of the JFK files is exactly 4 times 44 weeks before the predicted crash of Kamala Harris. By the way, God pairs 9 and 23, but he also pairs 9, 23, and 44. These are the numbers. These are like the 3 primary numbers. The basketball president who wore 23 was inaugurated as the 44th president in 2009. And so from the splashdown that involved the number 9, it is 4 times 44 weeks, a pairing of 9 and 44, before the predicted death of Kamala Harris. Kamala hints at Camelot, which hints at JFK. And also, 318 is 4 days, which rhymes with the 4 times 44 weeks, before the predicted deep state CIA bombs on March 22nd. And that has the assassination of JFK by the CIA to the predicted DEEP state CIA bombs on March 22nd. It was 4 astronauts that splashed down on Earth on March 18th, 4 days before the predicted bombs. The 4 days from the 4 astronauts makes that a 44. That pairs with the 23 plus 23 plus 23 weeks that followed the 2 times 30 years to the death of JFK. And JFK again inspired America's exploration of space. And again, the splashdown was in the Gulf of America. The 4 astronauts splashed down in the newly renamed Gulf of America. 9 equals judgment, and Dragon Crew 9 rescued the astronauts after 9 months, and they splashed down in the Gulf of America off the coast of the capital city of the 9 plus 9 plus 9th state, making this a judgment sign for America. The connection to, and by the way, I believe, wait a second, God uses firsts for signs, and this would be the first splashdown since the Gulf of America was renamed. That's huge. That's, the title of this video could even be that. That's how huge that is. And I just realized it now. And this happens to me all the time. As I'm speaking the information to the microphone, I'm always seeing something new in the information. But it can't be overstated how important that is. That's not trivial. That's a big thing here. The Gulf of America was renamed the Gulf of America. Let me give you a little background on that too. The Gulf of America, since this is a big deal, let's give a little background on the Gulf of America. The Gulf of America was renamed the Gulf of America because the Gulf because the U.S. coastline, Gulf Coast, is 1,700 miles, and the Mexico coastline is also 1,700 miles on the Gulf Coast. So the two nations have an equal amount of coastline. Why should it be named the Gulf of Mexico? There's no real reason. It's not like Mexico has more coastline. And it's two nations that have 1,700 miles. That's because the 2 planes that struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart on 9/11. Now, the reason why 2 planes struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart on 9/11 is because the 2 space shuttle disasters were almost exactly 17 years apart. I mean, literally just a couple of days apart in the calendar, and they are commemorated on the same day every year because of this. And so, in other words, they were exactly 17 years apart. And it was 2 space shuttle disasters, which was why it was 2 planes that struck 2 towers 17 minutes apart. Now, why did God point to 2 space shuttle disasters 17 years apart through the events of 9/11? Well, that's because the 17 years hints at Apollo 17. That's why the 17 minutes in between the 2 flights on 9/11. Apollo 17 was the last time that an American was on the moon. The departure of America from the moon, the last time in the Apollo 17 mission, is symbolic of America's departure from Christ. The moon is a giant rock, and in the Bible, rock is symbolism for Jesus. The sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. Which is why watching for the timing of the moon in the Bible is important, and it is symbolism for watching for the timing of the Lord's return through prophetic signs, including moon signs, including Apollo 17, and therefore 9/11, because it pointed to Apollo 17. The last time that an American departed the moon, which was symbolic of America's departure from Christ. Also, the first time that an American was on the moon was Apollo 11. And by the way, Apollo hints at Apollyon in the book of Revelation 9:11. Right? That's another you know what? I have to be honest. I was about to like continue as if that wasn't the first time that I ever thought about that. But I admit it. It was the first time that I realized that. And it's so clear and obvious. It's amazing that it took that long. But the 9/11 events actually did point to Revelation 9/11, because Revelation 9/11 is about Apollyon, which is hinted at with Apollo. And again, the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart pointed to the Apollo missions. Wow. Now, the first time an American was on the moon was Apollo 11. That gives us the bookend missions of Apollo 11 through 17. Well, the 1117th word, in other words, the 1117th word in the Hebrew concordance is the word for Bama, capital B, proper noun, which means high place. The moon is a high place. It's high above the moon, metaphorically. High above the earth, I should say. Okay, and of course, when astronauts are launched, they are launched high above the earth, right? So it's a high place. That's the name Bama. We have Apollo 11 to Apollo 17, which hints at the 1117th word in the concordance, Bama, and that's part of an equation that reveals the identity of the Antichrist. Because the name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Jesus said in Luke 10:18 that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. The name Barak in Hebrew means lightning. That's a fact. The name Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven. For example, it is said that Lucifer fell from the high place. Also, in the Bible, the high places is a euphemism for the false religious worship that the Jews would conduct on the tops of mountains to false gods. So the name Barak, and in the language Jesus would have spoken, Aramaic, the word for from is O. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. That's a fact. There's only three possibilities. And let me be clear. There are only three possibilities. I've said this to people that believe, based on their false theology, that the identity of the Antichrist is not possible to know, and they still refuse to accept it, even though it's completely irrational to refuse to not pick one of the three options and to continue to believe the identity of the Antichrist is not knowable. Jesus didn't say this for no reason, and these evangelicals have no clue at all what was intended by Luke 10:18 when he said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. They have no clue what it means, and I do. And it means Barack Obama. Okay? Now there's three options. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying, like, he really didn't recognize that what he was saying, or he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, not intending for the correlation and knowing that it would confuse us, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any rational, logical sense. Jesus revealed the identity of the Antichrist. And why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? Why be so dogmatic about 2 Thessalonians chapter 2? It's not at all what you think it is saying. Paul, when he spoke about what was holding the Antichrist back, he spoke of it in terms of a he and a what. Why did he do that? Why did he refer to the Holy Spirit as a he and a what? And why did he speak cryptically? Why didn't he just say the Holy Spirit? And why did he tell the Thessalonians that they knew what he was talking about? Okay, so the Thessalonians know and we're supposed to guess? The reason why he spoke cryptically is because he knew anyone in possession of the letters, if he spoke plainly, would be in danger. Because what he was speaking about, in terms of the he and the what, was the emperor of Rome and him moving the he, and him moving the capital, Rome, the what, to Constantinople. And that removal of the capital allowed the rise of power of the bishops of Rome, who would then claim to be sitting in the seat of God, which is what they do. the popes. The first pope was an emperor. But before that were the bishops of Rome, and their power ascended after the emperor moved to Constantinople. And that's what Paul was talking about, okay? And that's just one of many, many, many examples of how Bible prophecy is exceedingly clear without any question. I mean, it's like so shameful. It's so in the text, it's so clear. In many examples, in the book of Revelation and in the Old Testament. Anyway, it's really frustrating because it's ridiculous to what I call the evangelical guessing game of who the Antichrist is. They love to play this guessing game. You know, and also, what's also really bad about it is the rotten theology behind it. Like I said, it's all rooted, the interpretation that gives them the Holy Spirit is actually related to their doctrine of salvation, which is also heresy. So, anyway, back to what I was saying. What was I saying? Now, I was talking about the Gulf of America. Right. So that's how huge the Gulf of America is, important. And on the day that it was first officially renamed, which was January 21st, the first full day of Trump's presidency, the Gulf Coast had unprecedented winter weather, flurries, snow. Like there was, I believe, 10 inches in downtown or on Bourbon Street in Louisiana, in New Orleans, for example. And it was all, the news, in other words, was all about the Gulf Coast. And that was the day that the, some military or something, officially renamed it the Gulf of Mexico. It was the beginning of the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of America. And they had these Gulf signs on that day. And the stories were about the flurries, the blizzardy weather, the flurries. And it was the same day as Trump started issuing his flurry of executive orders. That was the headlines even. Trump issues flurry of executive orders. Over and over, that was the headline. Flurry of executive orders, right? But that was the same day as the flurries on the Gulf Coast, which he had just named, Trump, the Gulf of America. So it's really symbolically important, the renaming of the Gulf of America. And it ultimately points back to what I just said because of the two nations with 1,700 miles, which points all the way back to Apollo 17. And that's why, this video could have been on this subject alone. That's why this first splashdown since the renaming of the Gulf of America is so important. It points back to Apollo 17 and America's departure from Christ. All right, now, let's get back to the subject of this video. This is the subject of the video. I just didn't realize it before I started making the video. Now, so the 4 astronauts splashed down in the newly renamed Gulf of America. 9 equals judgment, and the Dragon Crew 9 rescued the astronauts after 9 months. And they splashed down in the Gulf of America off the coast of the capital city of the 9 plus 9 plus 9th state, making this a judgment sign for America. And it was also the first splashdown since the renaming of the Gulf of America, and as I just explained, that pointed back to 9/11, and also even further back to Apollo 17, the departure of America from Christ. The connection to the explosion at the Rainbow Bridge confirms the 4 days between the 4 astronauts and the predicted explosions in New York City. Okay, so again, we had the splashdown connect with 23 plus 23 plus 23 weeks to the car explosion, which then connected with 2 times 30 years to the day that Kennedy was assassinated in his car. But the explosion aspect of these connections points to the predicted explosions that are coming. Okay? That's why that's all relevant there. Every part of it is relevant. Now I've just explained why the explosion aspect of this car, because the car exploded. If you recall the story, it flew into the air and exploded. Big explosion at the border crossing, right? the governor of New York said the incident that was caught on video was surreal, unquote, quote unquote. Okay, now, the movie Pulp Fiction was voted as the 4th greatest film of all time in a nationwide poll for Britain's Channel 4 in 2001. Pulp Fiction tells 4 intertwining tales of crime and violence in Los Angeles, which is, again, God is using Los Angeles to hint at fallen angels. So the big thing about this movie, and so in other words, the number 4 symbolizes Pulp Fiction. The big thing about Pulp Fiction and why it is said to have been the most innovative movie in recent decades and the most innovative movie of the 90s and all this. It was a transformative movie in terms of cinema history. Because it had this unusual plot that Quentin Tarantino devised to tell the story, and the plot wasn't in the movie done in chronological order, and the plot followed 4 intertwining tales. So the plot wasn't just one tale; they were 4 different stories that interconnected, which made it so really highly unusual and caused the viewer to be fully engrossed and paying attention to keep up with the plot. And the plot is about 4 intertwining tales. That's the thing about this very big, important movie in cinema history is about 4 intertwining plots. So it can't be, it's not an exaggeration to say that in terms of prophecy, theoretically, this movie could be symbolized by the number 4. All right? Okay. Now, the plot of Pulp Fiction involves a briefcase. This is how this movie first came into my radar as being possibly prophetic. It occurred to me that I needed to look up the famous movies in history that involved a bag or a suitcase or a briefcase, because it would be symbolism for a suitcase nuke. And so if God is pointing to a suitcase nuke, it's very logical that he would use a movie that involves a bag of something, like a bag of money or something. And there are many movies, actually, that are centered around a bag or a briefcase or something. And one of those movies is Pulp Fiction. Okay? Now, this briefcase is part of a pattern in God's signs that points to either a suitcase nuke or, more likely, a dirty bomb smuggled, which would be the briefcase symbolism, weapons-grade plutonium. Now, it's possible that on March 22nd, a suitcase nuke will be detonated. That's possible. I could have it, because the reason why I say it's possible, because I'm not exactly 100% sure why the incorporation of for example, briefcase in Pulp Fiction and the other examples, of which there are many, what is the meaning? Maybe there's 2. Maybe there'll be dirty bombs and then later on there'll be a suitcase nuke. Maybe. But I'll give you another example. There was the suitcase thief, the transgender guy that Biden made the head of the nuclear waste. He was the head of the nuclear waste department. And he was this young, inexperienced DEI hire, a transgender guy, who was made head of the department. And it turned out that he ended up getting in trouble for stealing suitcases at airports with women's clothes in it, and then wearing them in public, which is in one instance is how he got caught. Because one of the suitcases was a suitcase of fashion clothes from a fashion designer from Africa, I think she might live in the US, but she's of African descent or something, because it was African style. That's why I remember that. And she saw him in her clothes in photos. But okay, so all kidding aside, I'm not kidding. That's what I said is true. But what I mean is that this is very serious, and it's also very creative for God to use this guy, to incorporate this guy in, at the same time implying or communicating that the sinful nature of this guy's lifestyle. And so he was the suitcase he was the suitcase thief, and he was the head of the nuclear waste department. That's clearly, nuclear suitcase bomb symbolism, right? This is another example. So why did God do that? Is it possibly that it's symbolism simply for smuggled, as in you smuggle the plutonium through a suitcase and then put it together in a bomb later? Probably that's what it is. But if I'm wrong, it's because there'll be a suitcase nuke detonation. Well, anyway, the Dragon Crew 9 splashdown of 4 astronauts on March 18th is 4 days before the predicted bombs in New York City. And the Dragon Crew 9 splashdown was 4 days after Dragon Crew 10 launched. The Dragon Crew 10 was launched for the purpose of rescuing the astronauts, so it's part of the story. Also, the Dragon Crew 9 mission was the 4th flight of the Dragon spacecraft named Freedom. So there's a spacecraft that they've named Freedom, and this was the 4th time that it was launched, the Dragon Crew 9. And again, the Dragon Crew 9 was splashed down 4 days after the 10 launched and 4 days before the predicted explosion. That's clearly a 44, and it pairs with the 4th flight ever of this Dragon spacecraft named Freedom. And through this, God is pointing to the coming restriction of freedom, similar to what happened in the CVD years, but on a much greater scale. Anyway, this is a pairing of 9 and 44, because it was Dragon 9, and we had these 4 and 4s, which hint at 44. And that confirms the signs, because, again, God pairs 9 and 44, because the 44th president was inaugurated in 09. Now, the Dragon Crew 10 enabled the rescue of the 2 stranded astronauts. On the same day that Dragon Crew 10 launched, on its journey into space, the music band Journey abruptly canceled their concert during their performance of Don't Stop Believin' due to an electrical fire. And so that's the electrical fire aspect of this is disaster symbolism, which hints at the coming disaster of the detonated dirty bombs, all right? But God uses records for signs, and the song Don't Stop Believin' is the most downloaded song of all time. In other words, you could say this is the #1 song of all time. Okay, now Don't Stop Believin' is a hint, it's a communication from God to his true Christians to don't stop believing, even though the times are going to get very rough. Okay, so don't stop believing. In other words, persevere, right? Perseverance of the saints, as it's spoken about in the Bible. So we have this concert by Journey that was canceled during the performance of their #1 song, Don't Stop Believin'. And it was in, okay, I'm getting ahead now. The concert was in Houston, the 4th biggest city. God uses this city, Houston, for symbolism for the number 4. The metro area of Houston is the 4th biggest, makes it the 4th biggest city in the U.S. And so there are many ways in which God has confirmed this. And there was, for example, the Category 4 Harvey that dumped 4 feet of water over 4 days on Houston, 4 days after the eclipse in 2017, and on and on. But anyway, it was also the 4th city that Brother Philip Blair did in his 10 cities in 10 days prophetic sign. If you know Brother Philip Blair, pass this video to him and please let him know this channel, because I talk about his very important prophetic sign in a number of videos. And anyway, that was the day when on his fourth city out of the 10, he preached in front of the Planned Parenthood headquarters, national headquarters. Anyway, so it is the fourth city in God's signs. And on the day that the concert was canceled in the fourth city, 4 astronauts returned from space, and it was, 4 days after the concert in the fourth city, 4 astronauts returned from space. And the 4 astronauts returned from space 4 days before the predicted explosions in New York City, which is again alluded to with the electrical fire and the abrupt cancellation. But I assume, I didn't actually read the article, but I assume there would have been an evacuation of the concert hall. And that's, come to think of it, I just thought of it now, but that is the point of that sign also, is the evacuation aspect of it. And that's because God is using this pattern of evacuations to also point to this prediction for the dirty bombs in New York City, because following the predicted dirty bomb explosions, there will be an evacuation from Manhattan. That's the purpose of dirty bombs, by the way. It's not for its destruction, but for contaminating an area and the psychological effect and causing an evacuation. Now, Houston is Harris County, and pi is 3.141. This Journey music sign, the band Journey, on the day that the launch of the Dragon 10 journeyed to space, on the date 3/14, which since it's pi, a lot of people, math buffs call it Pi Day, is 3 years and 141 days, as in 3.141, before Kamala Harris, as in Harris County, Houston, her plane is predicted to crash on her journey across the U.S. on August 2nd, 2028. That day will be exactly 4 + 4 years, a total of 8 years, after the first Dragon Crew splashdown. So it all comes full circle, right? The Dragon Crew connects to the prediction for Harris's crash, which connects to the first Dragon splashdown. Now, the movie Pulp Fiction, and that, by the way, is again 8 years, and the movie Pulp Fiction cost $8 million. Dragon Crew 10 was launched to rescue the stranded astronauts 8 days before the predicted explosions in New York City. And again, Pulp Fiction hints at that. All right, and so the launch of Dragon Crew was for rescuing these 2 astronauts, which I'll explain in the next paragraph, points to the movie Pulp Fiction. Okay, so I'll repeat that. Dragon Crew was launched to rescue these astronauts, which I'll explain, points to Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction cost $8 million, and the Dragon Crew that launched to rescue the astronauts that point to Pulp Fiction was launched 8 days before the predicted explosions in New York City. And again, Pulp Fiction hints at a suitcase nuke or a dirty bomb. The prophetic Dragon Crew splashdown on May 2nd, 2021 was the first nighttime splashdown since Apollo 8, which was the first time Americans reached the moon. They didn't land on the moon in Apollo 8, they went around the moon the first time. God uses firsts for signs. Again, the moon symbolizes Christ, a giant rock. In the Bible, rock is symbolic of Jesus. So it was the first time symbolically that Americans went to the moon, which symbolizes Christ. Anyway, it was Apollo 8, and God pointed to Apollo 8 through the prophetic splashdown on May 2nd, 2021, which I talked about earlier. And so all of this connects again because of the Apollo 8 and the $8 million of the movie that was Pulp Fiction, the cost of it, and also this 8 days connection from the Dragon Crew launch. It all connects because of the Apollo 8. Oh, you know what? Wow. Because the splashdown on May 2nd, 2021 was the second space crew splashdown. And Dragon Crew 10 would be 8 splashdowns later. So the splashdown that pointed to Apollo 8 was 8 crew missions before this launch of the Dragon Crew 10, which was 8 days before the predicted explosions in New York City. Oh, wow. And also, the Dragon Crew 10 was for the purpose of rescuing these 2 astronauts, which I'll explain points to Pulp Fiction. But we have Apollo 8 hinted at on May 2nd, 2021, and then 8 Dragon Crew missions later to a mission that points to Pulp Fiction, which cost $8 million. That's 888. The name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888 in Greek gematria. And again, the moon, as in Apollo 8, is symbolic of Jesus. But with Apollo 8, we don't have an 888. But now it's realized that Apollo 8 does connect to an 888. And it connects to the predicted explosions in New York City. That's so huge, I don't even know what to say at this point. This is the second time now in this video where the massive revelation has come while I'm making the video. And once again, it's all about Apollo. And the moon symbolism for Christ. I'm just going to repeat it. It was Apollo 8, and that was 8, which was pointed to with the Dragon Crew mission or splashdown in May of 2021. And that mission, the crew, that Dragon Crew was 8 Dragon Crews before this recent one that was launched to rescue these astronauts that point to Pulp Fiction, which cost $8 million. And the launch is 8 days. That's actually 4 8s. Whatever way you look at it, there's definitely 3 8s in there. But it was 8 days. The launch was 8 days before the predicted explosions in New York City. Wow. Okay. Now, here we go. The names of the stranded astronauts that were rescued are Suni Williams and Barry, nicknamed Butch, Wilmore. Bruce Willis, his character in Pulp Fiction, is named Butch. The names Williams and Wilmore hint at Willis. That's clear, right? But that's also confirmed because of the name Butch. Because Butch Wilmore hints at Bruce Willis, his character, whose name is Butch in Pulp Fiction. And let me just go off onto a tangent here. Bruce Willis played a boxer in that movie. Boxers receive punches to the head. Bruce Willis is now known for his brain dementia disease. And that is a hint at the coming mass demonic possession through the brain and delta brain waves of those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. That's part of what will happen when the mark of the Antichrist is promoted by the demons from the demonic realm that will pretend to be aliens after they cross through the door portal from the demonic realm into the earthly realm, which is what is symbolized with the Dragon Crew mission, when it's descent from the second heaven to earth, as in Revelation chapter 12, and then them exiting the portal door of the capsule, as I explained earlier, and how it all connected to the door opening of the Pope and all that, who has the key, the Vatican, to the bottomless pit. And wow, that's why Bruce Willis, by the way, make no mistake, it's not just for Bruce Willis in the name Butch. It's also because of Bruce Willis's current condition. And also he played a boxer in the movie, and people that boxed for their living and career often have brain injuries later in life, right? But that's all symbolism for the coming mass demonic possession when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm, and it'll be facilitated through the brain, because the components inside the things that people are taking make their way to the brain, and that will trigger delta brain waves at some point, triggered by 5G frequencies, and that will facilitate the mass demonic possession of people. This is what God is communicating through his science. All of what I just said, all of it. I mean, I would have never have concluded that 5G was, a part of this. Prior to God demonstrating it in his science, I was reluctant to think of it at all, the issue of the 5G. But it really is sinister and evil. And it's all part of this, what I've just said. Everything that I've said is overwhelmingly confirmed with God's true big picture of science, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And believe me, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this video and this prediction. It is to prove these controversial things that I'm saying. That is the purpose. The purpose of this prediction is not to say, oh, cool, you were able to figure some things out and know ahead of time when something was going to happen. No. That's not the purpose of this prediction that is from God. And I know the purpose, not you. The purpose of this prediction is to prove what I am saying. That is the purpose of the prediction. Make no mistake. So, now, just to finish this up, a couple more things. Also on the day of the launch, on the date 3/14, it was announced that the ISIS leader was assassinated. The Dragon crew went to the ISS, which hints at ISIS, and vice versa. ISIS is Sunni Islam. It's a branch of Sunni Islam, which hints at Sunni Williams. So we had the prophetic significance fully of the name Barry and Butch Wilmore, okay? And we had Williams, which also hinted at Willis, but is there a significance to the name Sunni? Well, yes, there is. Because of Sunni Islam and the connection on the day of the launch that was launched to rescue Sunni Williams. Now, ISIS is a terrorist organization. The predicted bombs in New York City will be an act of terrorism. That's what's hinted at. That's why God connected ISIS and the terrorist organization to all of this in order to confirm everything that I'm saying, is that the splashdown and the Pulp Fiction movie and all of the interconnection here is ultimately pointing to the coming act of terrorism. And this is a solid icing on the cake with this connection to Sunni Williams and the ISS space station and the assassination of the leader of the terrorist organization, because the coming bombs will be an act of terrorism. Furthermore, it will be used ultimately as part of the pattern of Satan using the left, manipulating them to develop the coming persecution of what people are calling on the left so-called domestic, begins with a terror, ends with an ists. Now, the predicted bombs will be 8 days after the launch to rescue Sunni Williams and Butch Wilmore. Williams and Butch Wilmore hint at Bruce Willis's character, Butch, in Pulp Fiction, and Pulp Fiction cost $8 million. The number 8 is 4 plus 4, and the 44th president, Obama, is the Antichrist who speaks like a dragon in Revelation chapter 13. And so that, on that note, I'll end this. It's all pointing to the Antichrist who, quote unquote, speaks like a dragon. There is a president who became president due to his ability to deliver a speech, and is famous because of his ability to deliver a speech. And that is the president, the former president that speaks like a dragon, who constantly lies. That's what's also hinted at with this theme of the dragon crew. It's identifying the Antichrist who speaks like a dragon, and that is Barack Obama.
Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus.
Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.